Good afternoon and welcome to the Hibs Observer Monday briefing with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Craig Nisbet to look back at Hibs 2, Kilmarnock 2 in the Scottish Premiership at Easter Road. A game very much of two halves yesterday for David Gray and his team. Scintillating in the first half, it must be said, and then just things sort of fizzled out a wee bit after the interval for a variety of reasons that we'll get into. Just before we get started, folks, as always, a word for our sponsor. The Hibs Observer is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to S1 Jobs and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. So start your search today. Craig, thank you for joining us. How are you getting on?
Yeah, good mate. It was a very, very interesting game yesterday, so well worth a chat about, I think.
It was plenty of talking points, some good, some not so good. I'm going to try and cover as many of them as we possibly can. So, I mean, before we get into the sort of finer details, I mean, what was your kind of general thoughts on how that panned out yesterday? Because it was a bit of a head scratcher come the final whistle.
Yeah, I think you nailed it in the intro. Really, it was a proper game of two halves, and I think he made. We were talking, I think, on the last podcast about would he make any changes? Would he keep everything the same? Would he rotate the squad? He obviously made a few changes, like a couple of wee surprising ones in there as well. And by the time up till 44 minutes, you were thinking, this is incredible. I can't believe we've brought people back in. We've tweaked the shape a bit, moved people positions. It's all working really, really well. And then it just seemed, after we conceded that goal, it just really kind of permeated and dripped through into the second half. And there was a lot of nerves and tiredness kicking in and things like that as well. So it was strange. And I think it was strange because we've just not been in a situation like that for a long time in terms of performance levels. So it felt a bit alien.
Yeah. I think you can maybe sense that a wee bit in the reaction that there's been to it. I mean, there's I've kind of seen maybe a few folk kind of to an extent sort of maybe freaking out a wee bit over the result in the performance yesterday. But I think it's like you said there, it's the manner of how it happened, how unlikely it felt. Even when Kelly pulled one back, and then as you say, just not kind of used to seeing that from this Hibs team for quite a while. And I think, just we kind of sort of put that to David Gray after, like, because of what do you think? What you mentioned, like errors, and I kind of said to him, well, what do you think were sort of behind that? Because like it's just something we're not really used to seeing from this team for quite a while now. They're usually so, I think, in terms of defence, like, and I mean this obviously as a compliment, it's like they've been really stingy over the past however many months. You've teams generally I've had to work hard to score goals. You can just you only need to look at the Midtjylland game and what it took to get past Hibs that night. So it was a bit, but I mean, it's hard to draw too many conclusions for it as to whether people should be genuinely concerned. My gut feeling is probably not. I think there was a lot in that first half to really be excited by for Hibs fans. I think, and obviously you come away for the game and you think, how have Hibs end up drawing 2 each from being 2-0 up, and you look at the kind of maybe what didn't go so well in the first half. But I think as a blueprint, that first half could be a bit of a launch pad if Hibs can do that consistently.
I think as well, just like context as well. This time last year we were conceded. Well, we got 3-0 away to St Mirren, 2-0 against Celtic without really laying a glove on them, and and then just about to go to Celtic Park to play them in the League Cup. So at this point last year, it wasn't great at all. Whereas you look now, we've got 4 points from 6. Yeah, you would probably prefer 6 out of 6, and maybe people would have thought that, but we've had a couple of tough European games in there as well. We've got a brilliant opportunity to get through the next round on Thursday. So I don't think it's quite panic stations.
No. And I think 4 points out of 6 is a decent return. I think when you've been playing in Europe, I think obviously you do need to apply a bit of context to that it really should have been 6 out of 6. But compare it to the start of the 2023-24 season, I think it was 3 in the bounce. Hibs lost at the start of the season. It cost Lee Johnson his job. So it doesn't look as though that's going to that level of dip is going to afflict this team. I think they're made of a bit sterner stuff. But if we just take things, as we kind of usually do, these review shows on a Monday. The lineup, you mentioned the changes. Ellie Yuan, Junior Hoylett coming in the forward area, and Grant Hanley making his debut at the back. So what did you make of the decision to change it up a bit? How do you think they did, and how did those guys coming in, if at all, how did that tweak the shape, the approach? What did you see there?
I mean, I'm not really sure anybody would have called that, in terms of the amount of changes and just where they happened. But, when you sort of thought about it a bit more, it made sense. Obviously they want to get Hanley some minutes under his belt. That's really important, especially with like games on Thursday coming and things like that. Iredale has pretty much not had any rest, being that left-sided centre-back. I think Obita's maybe slotted in there a couple of times, but he's pretty much played consistently. So that one made sense. And then, obviously McGrath then dropped into centre midfield beside Levitt, which I think was a real positive. They two really worked well together. I thought McGrath really good touches. And again, if you are coming up against a team that set up in a similar way to you, which Kilmarnock did, you need guys in the middle that are going to break lines and play risky passes and play forward, which McGrath and Levitt can both do. Good to see. I thought Josh Mulligan was brilliant at right wing back. He just gave us that. He was so unlucky not to get a goal. Just willing to run at players, and again he adapted well, because I thought he was brilliant when he went into central midfield, and I think well deserving of getting the player of the match. And then obviously we know what Ellie Junior can bring to the team, and it was a little tweak in shape in the fact that we almost sort of went like a 3-4-3. They sort of played there, and the rotation between them all, considering they've not really played together competitively this season, I don't think, and just how they rotated in and out, is Junior Hoylett and Obita have always had quite a good footballing relationship when they play, so that was really effective down the left. When you throw McGrath on that side as well, it was really good. And obviously Ellie, again, just the way he carries the ball, his decision making was great as well. And obviously he helped himself to a goal in the first half. So no, and I was saying to you before we started that first half, some of the football was brilliant. Some of the most exciting stuff I think we've seen for a long, long time. So it shows that we can rotate and we can perform. That's dropping Boyle, that's moving Iredale out of the team. That's moving big players that contribute a lot. So it does show we've got that depth in the squad. But we only managed it for roughly a half.
Aye, I know it was really good. I think, and you talk about the sort of interchange at the front three. I think Hoylett has general tendencies to maybe drift towards that sort of inside left pocket. But I think when you put somebody like him and Yuan in the same team, and they are both players who I think can they can play their best stuff when they do have a bit of license to roam. And then I think guys like that, when you get good footballers, intelligent footballers, it kind of comes naturally to them, I think, in terms of where to be and how to interchange with other good players. And it was good to watch. It was really, really good to watch. I mean, we haven't seen much of Yuan at all over the past several months due to injury. I think his last start was against Hearts on Boxing Day. And to come back in, he looked pretty hungry. He was working hard. His touch and whatnot looked a bit sharper, I thought, than some of the substitute appearances he'd made. So that was encouraging. If he's going to be able to make a significant contribution. And Hoylett is just, I'm going to steal a sort of phrase from Patrick that he used just today. But Hoylett, he is a bit of a cheat code at times that you can. He's not. If the pattern is that he's maybe not going to feature so much from the start in these European away games, but then to be able to drop him in. For a league game on a Sunday, his touch is so secure, his movement's so good. He makes other players around him better, and he was a joy to watch in that first half, to be honest.
Yeah, do you know? And I think all he's been lacking this season is just his shooting boots, because he's had a couple of chances that he's just kind of mishit. But do you know the other big thing I thought from both Yuan and Hoylett is I thought their pressing, out of possession, I thought they were unbelievable, and especially Ellie, just chasing back, putting Kilmarnock under real pressure, causing a lot of turnovers, and that was like a really big part of how we went ahead and just got a part of that game was we were just the effort that was going in from both of those guys on the side, and I think that also takes a little bit off Bowie as well, and different for him as well. I'm sure he probably preferred to play with a front three where there's a couple more players in and around him to get on the ball, but it takes a bit of weight off him pressing, knowing that when the ball goes wide earlier, Junior's going to be there to press, and it's not really on him to go and step out. So I thought that was a real positive. But you're right, I think the fact that we know you can rely on those guys, to come in and perform like that, that's a really good sort of stepping stone, I think, for going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of variety of goals as well. First goal, Hibs still showing that they've got a set piece threat. Great delivery from McGrath. Perfect delivery to Mercer. It's so hard for defenders, goalkeepers to deal with that when it comes in at that sort of pace. And to be honest, Rocky just sort of needs to let it hit off his head, really. And it's 9 times out of 10, it's grand. He does well to keep it down. Another goal for him, second of the season already.
And just on that goal, Liam, I think one of the big things that is good having a front three is that quite often the pattern we were playing was sort of like centre back to right centre back, maybe out to a wing back, and then it was just popping into McGrath or Levitt, and they were just whipping it sort of round the corner and in behind. And when you've got a front three, you've obviously got an extra runner sort of in that area, which I think was really effective and, is actually a real plus point for playing with those guys. And even the build up to the goal, but with the free kick, it's like Hoylett, Yuan and Obita just linking up together, little fast feet, little bits, and then Obita does really well to win the free kick. So I think, again, that's a real positive of having those guys on that side, is maybe sometimes when it's Boyle and Bowie more as a front two, you're really relying on maybe whoever's playing as a 10 to get across and find that support. Whereas if you've got that front three, you should, feasibly have those players being able to run into those spaces. But whipped, I don't think I would have liked to have been on the end of that free kick. Rocky just let it bounce. It was hit with some pace, but a brilliant delivery from McGrath, and he's starting to show that every set piece he gets, he looks really dangerous.
Yeah, I know Rocky potentially seeing stars after he headed that one, and to be honest, it was whipped in with some pace, as you said, and then it got even better from there. The second goal's really well worked, hasn't it?
Yeah, I watched it again before we came on, and it's like a long ball forward, and actually Hanley does quite well to just sort of block off. It's maybe Dackers or Daniels, I can't remember, to let Rocky win the header. He goes down, Nick Walsh sort of waves him on. I'm not going to give, actually at the time thought I'll give Nick Walsh credit for letting the play go on, but I actually don't think he was given a free kick at all. So, and then after that, it's, great touch from Ellie into Hoylett. It's, Hoylett carries the ball really well. It's a great run from Kieran Bowie as well. He just sort of runs off to the left-hand side, pulls a defender away, which leaves that little bit of space. And, we're talking about Hoylett, and it's just a beautifully weighted pass in behind, and a great finish from Ellie as well, just sort of slides it under the goalkeeper.
Yeah. Sorry. Aye, absolutely. He was, really good finish, really good pass from Hoylett. There could have been a couple more sightings. There was a couple more sightings of goal. Hoylett actually, he got on the end of a header in the box at one point. It's just not something you see from him too often. Mulligan had that run with the shot that just went wide. Hoylett had another, was a bit earlier on. I think it's the one you were maybe referencing earlier on, where it just opened up for him, like the defender the wrong way, and then tried.
Bowie had a strike to the edge of the box as well.
Yeah.
So listen, there's no doubt we should have been well clear before then. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like there was absolute sitters being missed, but I think you kind of want at least one of those to to find its way into the back of the net, because 2-0, it's the big cliche around a 2-0 lead is that it's a dangerous one, and it's a cliche, but there is as we saw yesterday, there's a certain degree of truth in it, because after Kilmarnock scored, it was right on the cusp of half time. It's a bit of a mess from Hibs' point of view, not really defended too well, and as we said at the top of the show, it was quite unlike what we've seen from this team for a long time.
Yeah, going back through the game, like Kilmarnock had, I think from set pieces especially, they had a couple of moments. I think Bannon put a cross in for Dacker that just went sort of wide of the post, and then they hit the post, or Smith hit the post, and Smith actually also made a good clearance there as well. So you could tell from set pieces, I suppose their two boys up front were huge, so they were always going to be a threat. But yeah, the goal, Rocky, like I thought the guys at the back moved the ball really, really well. Like Hanley, Rocky and O'Hora, they all moved it well. I didn't ever feel that we were under too much pressure. Kilmarnock weren't really looking to massively press the centre halves, and because we had those extra runners, we could float the ball in behind. And yeah, I mean, we've seen Rocky drive out with the ball before, and it's something that I think we've covered it on the show before. Like, he's capable of doing that, and it is helpful sometimes if the other team, everybody's sort of picked up and there's not a lot of space, and he can drive into it and maybe commit someone. But he sort of drives forward, and then obviously under hits the pass, it gets picked up, and even then he recovers really well. He's got great recovery pace. Rocky gets into that side, Hoylett gets back to cover, to double up, and Dacker's, he does really well, doesn't he? I mean, he sort of skips between them both. It's a wee bit too easy, and then as he gets to the byline, I never really noticed at the time in the game, but watching it back, as the ball's pulled back, O'Hora sticks his foot out and it catches O'Hora's foot, and that what takes it into Polworth's path, and it's Levitt that's just kind of falling asleep at the edge of the box just for those vital few seconds, and then it's in the back of the net. And I think we've seen it in the Dundee game as well, is that we're as you said, we're stingy, and we're rock solid at the back, but we're not bulletproof. And if you are making mistakes like that and errors on your halfway line, or like Iredale did last week, then teams round about, they'll punish us, and that's what Kilmarnock managed to do.
Yeah, they did. And I mean, suppose it was at that point, it was kind of difficult to tell how it was going to pan out from there. But I mean, was it 3 minutes after the restart, we ended up getting a pretty good idea. Kilmarnock drawing level, 18-year-old Ben Brannan probably never score a better goal for the rest of his career. I mean, I don't think that's harsh or to say. I mean, what a strike! It's the kind of unexpectedness of it as well. And I think for a young kid to take that on from there, they kind of talk about maybe fearlessness in young players, and he's just thought, I'm going to have a go here, because it's one of those ones. I think if the player tries to bring it down, then he's going to have 2 or 3 bodies on him straight away, and he's caught it. He's caught it unbelievably well, in fairness to him, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I did think, Kelly, I thought they started the second half. I mean, obviously, even just before the goal, they were right at us. And again, Dackers had a big chance. I think Polworth clips it to the back post, and he's got a free header that goes over. I mean, I wasn't sure. I know at the time, before the corner, there was a lot of claims that the ball had maybe gone out before the corner, but you could see, and then Hanley actually made a really good block that I think comes from then they get the corner from there. So yeah, do you know what? One of my very close friends who I go to the game with, he was convinced Smith could have done better, and I wasn't sure at the time. I've went back and watched it, and it's hard because I think, like you say, nobody's expecting it. The way the ball comes out the air, Smith is like a wee bit. He's taking a few steps forward. He's actually pointing to the side, I think, trying to get people to pick up.
And obviously, he doesn't see it coming at all, does he?
No, doesn't see it coming. But I think you've just got to give a lot of credit. I think most goalkeepers aren't expecting that, and he obviously catches it dead sweet. And just the way, how he gets it up and down from there, I've got no idea. But an unbelievable strike to get them back in the game. And I think at that point, that's where, obviously, when it went back to 2-2, you could tell that we were pretty rattled at that point.
Aye, because I think that there'd be such an emphasis at halftime as to, is to try and get control of the game again, and try and probably take the sting out of it a wee bit. Don't give Kilmarnock any sort of encouragement from the outset, but they've obviously come out quite aggressively. And then, so I know you've got half time in between it, but essentially in about 3 minutes worth of football, the 2-0 lead is completely wiped out. So I suppose that is going to mess with heads a wee bit, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's probably, we've not had too much sort of adversity really over that last week. And we've always, even when I know we lost to Midtjylland in that sort of last minute way, but there was no real expectation on us to even push them that far, I don't think, as well. So it was the first time really it's 2-0 up. Oh, now we're back to 2-2. I think most of the stadium was still pretty positive around it, and there was still a lot of encouragement going. But I think at that point, probably you've conceded. You've had the game Thursday. You've got the game this Thursday. Maybe a few tired legs, as well as being nervous and thinking, right, certainly don't want to concede another one. And I think that then just kind of led to just a really cagey, kind of sloppy second half performance really across the team. I mean, Obita, we nearly conceded a goal right after. I mean, I watched that chance again where Mulligan goes to Obita and Daniels pinches it, and I mean, it's one of the worst decisions I've ever seen to have a strike from there. He could have slipped in Watson, I think it was, wasn't it? And that, I mean, at that point, I don't know what would have happened from there. I would have trusted us maybe to get a goal back, because that's the kind of mentality the team have. But yeah, I mean, at that point as well, we obviously, after that, they subbed off Hoylett and Yuan, and which I kind of understood, because we were kind of getting overrun a little bit in the middle of the park. Their pressing, it just wasn't as good. Kilmarnock had kind of just got a bit more of a foothold, so I did think we needed another body in there. So I think it was the right call to do, and then get Boyle on the pitch, and McGrath and Mulligan sort of went in front of Levitt, and we were a bit tighter in there, kind of more matched Kilmarnock, because they were sort of playing more like a 3-5-2. But it kind of then stifled a little bit of our play. We couldn't really build up the way we were doing, and we were still kind of relying on going down the channels. And Bowie was starting to tire as well, and it just was starting to. I felt for Craig, because I thought, I think he's done the right thing here, but then actually it was, because it kind of stopped Kilmarnock, but then it almost also stopped us as well in terms of creating a chance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he was a bit of a catch-22 there, Greg, because I think he did have to do something to sort of stem the tide a wee bit, because Kilmarnock, obviously, momentum behind them, as you say, they were starting to get a bit of a foothold. I think by that point, Levitt had started to fall out of the game. I've not got I had the figures in front of me earlier on, but I don't anymore. But I think there was, in terms of his involvement, first half versus second half was kind of dramatically reduced, and that's a kind of sign that maybe the guy who you want to be on the ball and dictating isn't having as much of an influence. And I do agree. I think he did have to do something. And obviously, if you want to stem the tide in midfield a wee bit, the obvious thing to do is to bring Mulligan in, to pull McGrath maybe in there for a 3, as you say. I think it was a bit of a shame in the sense that I think in the couple of minutes before they made the change, Mulligan he had a run at Brannan a couple of times, and he beat him twice, and it was a bit of a shame, I think, to then have to lose that influence down the right hand side, because obviously Cadden comes on, he's not got the same sort of running power that Mulligan has. You can see, not many in the league I think have that the way Mulligan has it, the way he carries the ball. I still think he did well when he went into midfield, Mulligan. But exactly what you're saying. It was there was a wee bit of a catch-22 there, I think.
Because then he took Levitt off to put Campbell on, because again we almost had to then go back to a 3 up front to try and kind of create something, so it sort of it didn't quite work out. And I think it's probably not a bad learning curve for the squad there, as well, to kind of to just say, actually, we're still, there's still potential for us to concede. There's still potential for teams to get at us. Like, that's twice now we've come up against teams that have set up similar. It looks like most teams, quite a lot of teams, are going to play with that sort of 3-5-2, 3-4-3, whatever. And it's not only about breaking teams down; it's also kind of knowing how to stop them. And after Kilmarnock got the goal, I think Levitt fell out because Dackers and Dan, they just sort of sat back on him and just left. We just left the back 3 with the ball. And even when we brought people on, it was hard for then guys like Boyle to get into the game and things like that, because we were kind of forced to go long. I thought Gray was sort of damned if he did, damned if he didn't in that moment. But and then as we were towards the end, you could just see it was. I mean, I know there was a couple of penalty shouts with handball and then McGrath's, but I don't think either were penalties for me.
No, I didn't think so, to be honest. It was the definition of kind of fizzling out a wee bit, and I think as much as David Gray's never going to use fatigue or Europe as an excuse, because he knows that there's you can't really. You've got to find a way to try and juggle it. He's not going to start blaming that. But I think one of the sort of 2 things that he cited were a sort of drop in concentration and a drop off in quality. And concentration and the quality of what you're doing with the ball that is kind of two of the things that generally suffer when fatigue starts to kick in a wee bit. So, I mean, I don't think you can, even though Gray can't come out and say that, and he won't, but like it's going to be a factor. I think some guys were, they were probably running a bit on empty towards the end. I agree with you in thinking that I think that first half display shows that there is depth in the squad to change it up and still bring a good performance. But there was a kind of variety of factors that came together in the second half that we've talked about there. It's the sort of sudden turnaround, the 2 goals really coming from nowhere, sort of uncharacteristic mistakes. The fact that Gray did sort of have to change the midfield setup a wee bit to combat what Kilmarnock were doing, and then the knock-on effect of that as it had for Hibs going forward. So it was just there was a kind of just a mixture of factors that sort of came together for the game to sort of just sort of die off the way it did, I felt.
Yeah, no, I think you've summed it up well, and even guys like at Jordan Smith, that second half it was like almost it was comical at times, really, and it just showed like somebody that's come in and been one of our best performers, so consistent. Even he was rattled by things there. I mean, the only thing I sort of like about something like that is it does mean that we do have decent depth in the squad, and especially if these Thursdays continue, there's competition for places, and there's no real room for these types of slip ups and performances, because we've got people off the bench that should be able to come in and play. But I think it was interesting. Again, I kind of thought with the subs, not that I think he should throw everybody in, but again, there was sort of like no Manny. Clegy came on right at the very, very end. I would have loved a penny for Salinger's thought sitting on the bench as well. So I do think for Gray, like, he went through like extreme turmoil at the start of last season. Like, you couldn't have had it any worse. Then he's went through like a ridiculous period of success, like, history breaking for the club.
Yeah.
Now the new challenge is like, now you're going to have sort of players to bed in. You're going to have unhappy players that want to play. Yep. You're going to have pressure from the fans and the demand for that consistency and things like that as well. So I do think it is a really interesting challenge for him this season.
Yeah, because the sort of, where Hibs are, the sort of status as a team in the league has changed. So much of last season was built on not so much an underdog story, but more a sort of, a revival, a sort of redemption arc, if you like.
Yeah.
It was so much of the season was chasing teams that were above Hibs, and then, once they got to third place, it was just about seeing that over the line. But now things are kind of changed in that sense, and that there's an expectation around this team to go and do that again, and to find ways to build on it. Teams are going to be seeing Hibs as a bit of a scalp this season, so that's different, even that as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's it. It's different sort of attitude towards us going in, and also these Thursdays, we don't know how much longer they're going to last, but we've got this big game on Thursday to come, and hopefully we've put ourselves in a really good place in that tie. Anyway, I think it'll still be a really, really tough game, but it's even managing that as well. And yeah, you're right, Gray's not going to come out and go, "I'll give us a break, we're playing Thursday, Sunday," but it certainly is, like, I think, for a mentality thing for the players and things like that, and for some of them it's brand new. It's completely different from anything they've done before. So
there's a lot of adjustment to be done. I think, were you a wee bit, would you have expected to see maybe the likes of Clegy come on a wee bit earlier? Because Gray, he has been at some time to explain what the situation is there. And I think, you've kind of got to take him at face value as to, when he sees that a guy who's coming into a new environment, new country, new teammates, new language, is maybe taking a bit of time to settle in. So, I think you do have to kind of take that at face value and think that he will get a chance when the manager feels he's ready. Gray, again, he can't really be looking at, well, oh God, we've played a club record fee for, this guy. I need to just fling him in as soon as I can. But do you think, I don't know if there's is there a tactical element as to why he maybe didn't come on earlier on Sunday? Because, Bowie stayed on the pitch to the sort of last possible.
Yeah.
But I thought he looked as though he was, his race had been run for a wee while before that. But is it a kind of, he doesn't want to take Bowie off because there's no like-for-like alternative to bring on for him, and then you end up front with, you've got Clegy and Boyle, who are who are more the same. Well, we've not seen much of Clegy yet.
No.
The sort of same mould of player. Is that why Bowie maybe stayed on for as long as he did? Because I think last season, when you look at it, if they were both available, there was probably very rarely, if at all, a time where maybe one of Bowie or Kukarevich were not on the pitch at all times. There was always that one profile of the big physical striker was generally on the pitch, whether it was one or the other. And then there was, is that an element into it as well? Am I kind of?
No, I think you're right. That's what I think. That game there, when Josh Campbell was getting warmed up, I presumed it was for Bowie, just to give us some sort of aerial threat there. So I was actually quite surprised when it was Levitt. It made sense, to get an extra body up there. But yeah, I think if you took Bowie off there and you put Clegy on, and Kilmarnock are sitting back and they've got big guys at the back, you're going to be putting balls in the box and just opening yourself up for a counter attack. So yeah, and I think for Gray, obviously, when Alassane Amani signed, he'd had a little bit of game, he had a bit of a pre-season, there was a bit of a wait. They put him in, got a red card, and that then obviously then he fell out the team for a bit. The consistency came back, and then he just couldn't get in for minutes, and we were chasing third. Maybe with Clegy, there's a little bit of that as well, to go, I'm just going to give him more time to sit, to settle. I think you're right. We have to trust Gray at face value for what he sees in training and things like that. Also, the thing that's going against them, if we play with you've seen there, if we play with a front three, you've still got Hoylett and Ewan to potentially oust out the team. If you play with a front two, it's Boyle, who's our captain. So Clegy, it's a really tough, front line to break into, really. And he probably just is going to have to be patient to bide his time. But we've seen with guys like Ekpiteta, sometimes you just might not get back in the team, and then have to leave. But I'd like to think as the season goes on, form will dip, injuries will come along, and those guys will get the minutes that they should be getting. Because I think there is an itching for the fans to see him and to see more of him. And he obviously needs game time to get used to the team and things like that. So I wouldn't be surprised maybe after Thursday, maybe away on Sunday against Livingston, maybe we'll get to see a little bit more of him. I think that would potentially be
Scottish football, isn't it? Livingston.
Yeah, that'll be it. But I sort of trust Gray and how he's sort of managed players, and he's got the best out of a lot of players that were written off, and so I'd like to think that he has got a bit of faith behind these guys and that they'll get their chance when it comes round.
Yeah, it is a long season after all. So we'll touch a wee bit on Thursday before we finish up. Obviously, that was some result for Partizan yesterday, 7-2. They won. So pretty much ideal preparation for them going into a European game. I don't know how much Hibs, if at all, I'll read into that. They'll know already that this is still a dangerous team that are coming to Easter Road on Thursday. But it is a kind of another wee reminder that this, the tie is far from over, and it's going to be another difficult night.
Yeah, no, I think they'll be a bit of a wounded animal when they come over. I think they were pretty embarrassed by the result and probably their performance as well. Like we said, when after the game, it was quite a naive sort of young performance, and certainly some of the actions by some of the players. So yeah, I think and maybe that second half performance against Kilmarnock will kind of check us and check David Gray in again, to be like, actually, we need to make sure that we're doing everything right again, and just let's not take things for granted. So yeah, I think it'll be a really, really interesting game. I think it'll be, the first goal will be huge in that one. But listen, we've put ourselves into a really good position from it as well, and it looks like it'll be a pretty full Easter Road, and everyone will be right behind the team. And yeah, we know from the first leg we're capable of competing and getting a result, so fingers crossed we can do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Teed up to be a really good night again at Easter Road on Thursday, and we'll speak more about that later in the week. But for now, we're just going to leave it there, folks. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Hope you found that insightful. Another alternative look at Sunday's game. Thanks to Craig, as always, for his analysis. We've got plenty of content from the weekend game on the website, and more going up later this evening. Post-match interview with Grant Hanley. You'll be able to read that from 10:30 p.m. tonight, and then tomorrow morning as well. So yeah, plenty to get stuck into it, and we'll have all the build up to Thursday's game over the next few days. But for now, thank you as always for joining us, folks, and we'll speak to you again soon. Cheers.